Amazing. Today we are live on the SEO Leadership webinar. Today we have on Leanne. She is the head of SEO at Logic and Magic. Logic and Magic focuses on the power of diverse thought and simplifying the complex, crafting unforgettable experiences across a multitude of platforms. Thank you to whoever wrote your about section. I absolutely love that powerful introduction. But Leanne, thank you for coming on the webinar. How are you keeping today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. How are you both?
Brilliant.
Surviving. Happy that it's Friday.
That's good.
I just wanted to sort of like jump into, I think, a nostalgia question, which is, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into SEO, and for anyone listening, sort of a bit about your career progression and how you got into Logic and Magic as head of SEO where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. So I always say I kind of got into SEO as a bit of an accident. I was looking for kind of general sort of marketing roles when I graduated, and I graduated into a recession, as I think most of us have done now as well. And yeah, there was few and far between of kind of marketing roles. And then I saw one appear that was SEO marketing assistant, I think it was. And I remember thinking, okay, what does SEO mean? So then obviously I did all of the research before the interview, and then got that role. So that was, oh my gosh, over I think 11 years ago now. And then I've had a very kind of linear career, all within SEO, and general search roles as well. I've taken sort of most of the steps. So I was then from SEO assistant to SEO executive, senior executive, manager, senior manager, then back to manager for a while. And then now I am head of SEO at Logic and Magic. Before being at Logic and Magic, I've always been in-house as well. So kind of working with agencies, never being in one until I joined here. And yeah, that's kind of that path, I suppose, that I've taken.
Awesome. And what's the sort of general experience or take on moving from agency to in-house?
It has been such a learning curve. I feel like I'm still learning new things every day. It's so much more kind of fast-paced. It's my biggest worry, and why I think I stayed in-house for so long, was because I like being kind of getting under the skin of kind of everything that is going on in a company, and I didn't really think I'd be able to do that at working at an agency and having multiple clients. But it's actually, I'm not really finding it that much kind of different from that perspective. I'm still learning things about what's going on in the client's businesses, how everything's working. So it's like I say, I honestly think I'm still learning things every day, but about how agencies work. Even though I've been here for nearly 3 years now. But yeah, it was a good change, I think.
Would you suggest we usually speak to people that like move from agency to in-house, and that's like sort of the general career progression or the general move. But I think from your sort of unique perspective, would you recommend going agency then in-house or in-house then agency?
Oh, that's interesting. I think I'm going to say the real SEO answer here. It depends. I think it depends on the person themselves. I think it depends on, part of your career that you're in as well. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that in another way, but I'm happy that I've done it this way.
And what made you sort of take that leap, I guess, from moving from in-house to agency, like that decision to kind of just nip it in the bud?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I remember just kind of seeing the sort of, I felt like I kind of needed a little bit more in my old role. And I remember seeing this role advertised, and I was very much, oh, am I going to, is it too much of a jump for head of SEO? Is it not? The fact that it was agency didn't necessarily come into that decision, to be quite honest. It was more kind of the role and the being able to take the ownership of the SEO kind of department and everything about that, really. But yeah, I am glad, like I say, I am really glad that I've moved agency side as well.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
And I have sort of two questions on that as well. First of all, would you recommend somebody, because obviously you left it right to like sort of almost, no, I don't want to say the peak of your career, because obviously you're still young and things like that, but you left it until you went to like a head off role. Looking back, would you recommend if somebody is maybe spent 3-4 years in-house or 3 years in-house to maybe make that switch a bit earlier, and not necessarily, is it maybe a bit easier to not go in at like right at the top and go in at like maybe like a mid-level role?
I would actually probably say so. I think because the in-house roles that I had were very central, either SEO or marketing teams. So I did kind of have some of that kind of, we almost worked kind of like an agency.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of that experience anyway. But I think the thing that I had to kind of learn more when I moved across was, kind of things like having like the templates that you use, for client work. And obviously pitching was very new to me as well. You don't have to pitch yourself as much when you're in-house as you do at an agency. So there's things like that as well. So yeah, I actually do think it would probably be a little bit, not easier, that's not the right word, but yeah, less of a learning curve, I think, if I'd have done it earlier on. But life's all about challenges, isn't it? And you don't grow if you don't stretch yourself.
No, I love that. And then sort of the final one was like, obviously you had to do an interview and stuff for the role. How did you sort of mitigate any sort of slight worries from the client side that you hadn't done the agency before, you hadn't managed at like an agency level before? Was there any sort of worries initially, or how did you sort of combat that?
I think, yeah, like I say, because I've always been in kind of central teams, maybe I was a little bit naive. I think in hindsight, I was probably a little bit naive, that I would, I've worked with different stakeholders before. So I probably didn't have those kind of concerns at the time. But it is very different. I obviously now know that, if you're an internal part of the business, it's very different to if you are agency side. So that may have been a concern that I should have been a bit more educated on, I guess. But yeah, there wasn't a huge kind of concern for me at the time, just a hindsight concern.
No, that's the best concern, probably.
Granted, your role may have sort of evolved over the transition from agency to in-house, as well as just general experience. I think this question is more posed to any SEO team leads that are looking to either decide whether they would like to be leading a team in an agency or a team in-house. What's sort of been your experience leading a team in an agency versus leading a team in-house? And do you have any tips to help someone, I guess, make that decision?
So to be honest, I don't currently have a team in my current role.
Oh, okay, that's easy.
So I'm not sure how it's an agent, how it will feel at an agency. But yeah, in terms of, like, say, being in-house, when I did have a team in-house, like I say, we were working as an internal kind of marketing team. And we did have almost like I say, those different stakeholders to kind of try and manage. So again, maybe this is something that when I do come to grow my team, that I will be a bit more kind of, I suppose, aware of, is that kind of that balance between, client time and things like that. I think will definitely be a big consideration on that.
Definitely. Awesome. Leanne, I know typically not all the time, because obviously there's quite a few exceptions, things like that, but typically sort of SEOs from in-house have a better understanding about how SEO plays into the whole sort of commercial aspect of the business and stuff like that. When you're hiring for sort of junior to mid-level SEOs in your previous roles and things like that, or even any sort of role like social and stuff like that, I know you've done before as well. What do you sort of look for in a CV? Is it that sort of commercial awareness, or is it like anything else that you sort of really sort of hone in for when you're reading the CV?
That's such a good question. I think it's all about attitude more than anything else, if I'm being honest. I think that someone could have a really sort of firm, few years experience on a CV, but if the kind of attitude isn't quite there on it, I think, if someone's willing to kind of learn, and I suppose kind of has a lot of self-awareness as well in terms of like their development and what they might need, I think that's more key than being kind of more sort of commercially focused, particularly for a junior role as well. I think having that kind of commercial mindset is something that you can almost kind of learn and grow with. Whereas I think things sort of like attitude and kind of motivation, I think might be the right word. That's not something that can, you either have that or you don't, I think.
Yeah. And do sort of side projects and things like that, does that come into play then, or if somebody has one, does that make them stand out a lot more to you? Or
I think so. I think if someone has, a smaller amount of experience, but it's clear that they're trying to build that experience on the side, so to speak, then I think that's such a lovely thing for people to have, because it shows them that they have an awareness that they maybe don't quite have the experience, but they're willing to try and get that experience as well. I think having a kind of side project or whatever that may be, it's just a good thing, isn't it? It's always nice to see.
Yeah, it is. I think just to build on that question, the current sort of state of the job market is very difficult and competitive at the moment. How would you, I guess, if you were in a position of having to apply for a job right now, hypothetically speaking, sort of put yourself out there to sort of stand out in a job market as an SEO? I guess from your knowledge and know-how of wanting to hire and bring on a team, if you had to like sort of have that role reversed and be applying, how would you sort of put your best self out there?
That also is such a good question. I think, that's such an interesting one. I imagine that being quite active on, say, LinkedIn, for example, is probably a good one, kind of working on your sort of, I suppose, personal brand in a way, because if you apply for a role, the first place that you look at the CV, and then for me anyway, you then go and find them on LinkedIn and see what they're talking about and things like that in real time. I think it would be that kind of, putting your best foot forward in terms of, I guess, as well, also your results, what those results are. And I can imagine with it being so competitive, I think those kind of side projects and, having something that's kind of extracurricular, I don't know if that's the right word, but I think that would also be like really, really helpful at the minute as well, especially if it's competitive. Just anything that can make you stand out from the crowd and I think showing off your personality as well it's always huge. It's great if you can do the job, but if you're not very nice, no one's going to want to hire you, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Communication obviously quite important, no matter sort of what level you are. Like as you just mentioned, if you're not nice, nobody's really going to want to work with you. How do you sort of communicate effectively? Obviously, both in-house and the agency side. Like in-house, obviously across sort of departments and things like that, and then agency side, either like sort of with your clients or with your own sort of C-suite and things like that. Is there any sort of tips or advice you can give for that, or even any sort of channels that you use for it?
Yeah, so I think in terms of channels, I mean, whatever if it's speaking to clients, I think whatever is most useful, whatever they use. I think if they're using Teams, for example, then, speak to them through Teams. Obviously, internally, everyone will have the same kind of channel. And then I think in terms of communicating, again, it's knowing what works best so say if it is someone on the C-suite, if they prefer, if they're always busy, is it an email followed up by WhatsApp? is it, do they actually just prefer a Slack message? It depends on, I guess, what they want. And I think knowing kind of what they care about as well is really important. So, if you're, I don't know, say again, someone on the C-suite, if you're messaging them, I don't know, about, I don't know, milkshakes or something. I don't know. You might speak to them about milkshakes. But say if they're really busy and, you're talking to them about something that they, it's not kind of high on their agenda, they're probably not going to kind of, respond as quickly as they would do otherwise. So I think finding out, if they find, if they're really interested in, I don't know, search rankings of a certain keyword, for example, which I found a lot, that, keeping them updated of that is kind of probably the best sort of, communication avenue as well.
Okay, brilliant. And you mentioned obviously now that you switched agency, you hadn't done as much sort of pitching and stuff like that before. It was fairly new. Also, you're coming up to, 2.5 years, just coming up to 3 now. What sort of difference as you're pitching now compared to what it was at the very start? And is there any sort of advice you can sort of look back on and be like, maybe like avoid that, or where have you sort of improved on maybe throughout the year?
Well, I really hope it's a lot better. To be honest. I think what I used to kind of, I think, assume a lot of kind of knowledge already, which I think was not a good thing. Whereas now I'll be very much more, kind of, not succinct, that's not the right word, a lot more descriptive when I'm, I'll tell people the why, I'll be telling clients, we'll do this and this is the reason why. I used to be very, oh yeah, of course we can do that, that's fine, that's great. Whereas now it's I'm much more confident in saying, oh, I don't recommend that we do that because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that's it. It's just a real kind of confidence has grown now with, obviously speaking to, clients day in, day out for 3 years as well. So yeah, just a lot more confidence, really.
Awesome. Kind of have 2 questions. I think I'll go with the first one first. Just in terms of AI, how have you sort of been implementing it and including it in your sort of work day to day? And I guess like how for juniors as well, how crucial is integrating AI into their systems and their tools? And is there anything that you highly suggest or recommend that they start incorporating into their work?
So I definitely don't think that I'm using it quite as intelligently as I could be. I will use it to support. So if I'm writing, say, a template, for example, I've been using it for things like that. I've also been using it to help me with formulas on Excel, which I feel is a bit of, no one's really mentioning this, but formulas in Excel, I've been using AI to kind of help me, troubleshoot formulas and create them. Like I say, probably lots more that I can be doing from an AI perspective. And in terms of, I think like I say, I'm probably not the best person to give advice on it, but it's just so good for kind of time saving. I think that's probably a huge way of using AI itself. Say doing those kind of tasks that you don't necessarily want to kind of do, or that kind of thing. Like say, so I think I use it, to be honest, I do use it regularly, but not in an intelligent way. I haven't set up any kind of script or anything like that from it. But yeah, I use it for time saving.
Awesome. And then, so the second one, I wanted to sort of like figure out how to properly, I guess, word it without giving too many like sort of discreet or secret details away. But have you been noticing any sort of, from a client side point of view, struggles and bottlenecks that I guess, not necessarily clients that you're currently dealing with or clients that you've been speaking to or just pitching to, that they've been like, I guess, struggling with this year that I guess SEOs that are in leadership positions need to take note of? and sort of work with them?
I think the biggest one that comes to mind is actual implementation happening as well. I think there is a lot of clients who will bring on an SEO team, but they don't necessarily have the kind of development time or the development in-house to do some of the, the kind of development optimizations that need to be made. That's definitely something that I've come across quite a bit, actually. So then obviously, obviously that then causes frustration, which I completely get from the client side, because they're investing in SEO, but nothing's kind of able to be done. That's been a big one. And then recently as well, again, the same thing, where people have been investing in search, so SEO, and this in particular was actually from a PPC client. But so the traffic's all coming to the website, but then people are just not converting. So there's that kind of, it's that, again, that kind of frustration of, you need to sort of take a step back and look at what's going on the website in that case as well. Because I think that's obviously so frustrating from a client if they are paying for people to get to their website, and then the user experience isn't quite there as well. But they're two kind of bigger ones that have come to mind on that.
Yeah, on that I froze out there with a bit of Wi-Fi, but on that user experience and sort of the CRO, is that something that you would check before you jump on that initial pitch and tell them, listen, the SEO can bring you to this level, but you do need to invest in this as well, and we can offer that? Or do you have somebody internally that can look at that? Is that something you would highlight straight away?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So for the majority of, not to get too salesy or anything, Paris, but I'll do it anyway. So because we're kind of an integrated agency, I work really, really closely with our Crow team and our development team as well. So so anything like that will be brought up in that kind of initial sort of stages as well. And then, if it's kind of further on, we have the ability then to, bring in our user experience team, bring in, development hours if needed as well. But I think it's you're not really doing a full service to the client if you're not checking on these things first as well. It's not, SEO isn't just about driving traffic, it's about, getting, the commercial gains from it as well. So it's always good to see that everything's kind of all in order before.
Awesome.
And I think obviously probably it's like sort of standard practice anyway, but having that sort of initial check of their website before you jump on those calls and having like almost like a mini sort of audit, if you want, do you reckon that actually helps the pitch as well, like makes it easier to sort of close, because they can see you've actually looked at their website, you can already highlight a few issues and things like that, makes it easier to convert them?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. I think like you say, it just shows that you've kind of looked outside of what they've asked for as well, in a way, and that you're thinking about, like say, about those kind of long-term commercial gains as well. So that's definitely been helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's probably better to highlight it straight away rather than get them in and then almost look like you're upselling them straight away, you need the RO as well.
Yes, definitely. No, definitely.
Right.
Cool. I wanted to sort of pick your brain about cross collaboration, especially just because you've, I guess, sort of moved from in-house into an agency setting now, and I just wanted to see like how sort of different is like working in departments and different departments and the cross collaboration sort of aspect been, and do you have any tips for any SEO leaders that are like working with other departments?
That's an interesting one. I think I've probably found it easier being agency side, because from where I've been prior as well, in most of my roles, I think development has been external. And I think that the relationship between SEO and development, it should be a partnership. And that's obviously slightly more difficult if you are, if your development agency is external and they have a set number of hours, and they're also using the hours across what, say, I don't know, the sales team want and what, other parts of the marketing team want as well. So I suppose thinking about it in that way, it's been much easier working agency side and kind of that cross department side of things, because I'm in the same building. Not we're all remote, but it's that kind of, we're under the same roof, so to speak, as those teams as well, I think.
Awesome. And then on the topic of soft skills, that's been such a hot topic currently at the moment, and just sort of like the progression in terms of like thought leadership, promotion. I wanted to sort of just ask you, how was your sort of experience building on soft skills as you moved up up within your role and through your career progression? And do you have any tips to SEOs that are moving into leadership positions that are trying to sort of master soft skills at the moment?
Oh, that's an interesting one. When you say soft skills, Shreya, sorry, do you mean things like kind of like the people management side of things, or so I was really lucky in that when I had my team, I was put onto a training course, an ILM training course. So that in itself, I think it really kind of changed how I sort of approached kind of line management and leadership as well. I think when I was first given the kind of a role as a line manager, I remember thinking, well, I'm a people person, and I know how to kind of talk with people and to kind of lead and to sort of, I guess, kind of manage in that way. But I think that having that kind of additional layer of education, which I know maybe takes away from it being a soft skill, was like actually really eye-opening, and it's something that I've not used, but it's always in the back of my mind, some of the things that I learned from that, even talking to kind of everyone. So like I mentioned before, kind of finding out people's why, what is it that gets them into work in the morning, besides what they're doing and being paid at the end of the month. I think that's just so useful to know. And I think the more people who you kind of speak with, the more people who you deal with sounds awful, but that's kind of what I mean. The more people who you're dealing with, I think you learn something from everyone in terms of how different people work, how you come across. And sorry, that was a really floaty answer to your question there, Shreya. Sorry.
I actually really enjoyed it, because I think that we've been doing like a little bit of research for our resources on sort of like thought leadership and mastering soft skills. And there's been so many articles coming out recently about how companies are just not investing enough into courses and training, because they don't see that the worth in it. So it's actually interesting that you are bringing up that it actually was something worth it for you. Would you sort of what was the course that you had done, and I guess would you recommend it if you can remember?
It was an Institute of Leadership and Management.
Okay.
Something level 3, I think. But can I just expand on what you've just said, if that's okay? I think that's the thing, is I really think that more companies should be investing in these kind of skills, because you kind of, I don't know, you get through your career of, say SEO, and you learn everything about SEO, and then, I think 50% of the time to be able to progress, it's with line management responsibilities, and it's a completely different, it's, as soon as people are involved, people are also different, and, helping and supporting people grow is not necessarily, it doesn't always come natural. So I absolutely agree that there should be more investment from companies in their kind of people managers as well. So yeah, so that's interesting.
I do think there's a wee bit of like a slight fear factor as well, and a few companies that like, oh, if we put, you know, 5,000, 10,000 pound into this person and then they get up and leave in a year or so, like, is that? But maybe just have more like internal training programs, something like that they create themselves, or something like that. I think definitely. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Yeah, that
What
was
a positive way to end the webinar. I was going to say, like, with such a strong call to action there. But Leanne, thank you so much for joining. That was such an interesting and insightful conversation. We really enjoyed speaking to you so much.
Yeah, that was great, Leanne. Thanks very much.
Thank you both for having me, and have a good day.
If anyone is listening and wants to follow Leanne or ask any questions, if you're allowing, or you can block, just check out Leanne in our LinkedIn page or down below in our YouTube comment section. Yeah, Leanne, thank you so much, and we will be keeping in comms, and have a great weekend.
And you, thanks, bye.
Cheers, Leanne.